Good afternoon, everyone. Let me begin by thanking all of you for coming out on such short notice. I hope those of you who celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah had a nice celebration yesterday. As you're now aware, Coach Jim Larranaga has decided to step down as our head men's basketball coach. He first brought this decision to us on Sunday, and after we asked him to reconsider, his decision was finalized on Monday. This was solely his decision, and while I will let Jim share his thoughts about stepping aside, I do know that the past months have worn on him. Like all of us in intercollegiate athletics, there is so much uncertainty, changing rules, name, image, and likeness demands from agents, unlimited transfers, etc. It can go on in these changing times. All of which takes so much time, effort, and energy away from actually coaching. And it becomes a challenge to create a team atmosphere. In the past years, we've seen legendary basketball coaches step away from the game. Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, Jim Boeheim, Mike Bray, and most recently, Tony Bennett. It seems clear to me that coaching in 2024 is a much different profession than it was just a few short years ago. As we shared in the release, the accolades for Jim at Miami are many. The wins, the NCAA tournament appearances, the Final Fours, the Elite Eights, the ACC titles. He's created an incredible resume during his time here in Coral Gables. Jim and his wife Liz's impact on our university, our department, and the Miami community is substantial. They embraced being Hurricanes each and every day. In the coming weeks, we will speak with Jim about potential continued involvement with the university. Also, we plan to celebrate Jim, and we'll let the public and all of you know here when that is finalized. Now, looking ahead, we're excited about Bill Courtney taking the reins for the rest of the season. Bill is a great coach, a tremendous person, and I'm confident that he will lead us in the right direction as we continue in our ACC season journey. I thank him for his willingness to step up. There will be time in the weeks ahead to discuss our search process, but today is about celebrating the winningest coach in the history of University of Miami men's basketball. Finally, please know Jim set a high standard for our basketball program, and the University of Miami is committed to investing in men's basketball. It is a priority and will continue to be a priority within our department and our university. So on behalf of the University of Miami, I want to thank Jim, Liz, Jay, John, their grandchildren, for all that they have done for the Hurricanes. He will always, and they will always, be a part of the Hurricane family. Jim?
And that much of an ovation, I'll say. All right, the first thing I want to do is just thank a host of people. And the first is to explain to everybody the University of Miami. I love it. And I want it to be as successful as it can possibly be. Not just in basketball, but in everything. I feel like my wife and I were blessed to have the opportunity to come here and work with such great people and such a great community, the Coral Gables community, and such an elite institution. And it begins at the top, and I want to thank our president, Joe Echeverria. I'm not sure exactly still, Joe, which is correct. I want to thank the chairman of the board of our trustees, Manny Cadre. He's been not only a tremendous supporter, but a tremendous friend, he and his whole family. Our athletic director, Dan Radakovich, and the support that he showed me when he arrived here a couple of years ago. The guy who brought me here, Jose Mas, we got to know each other years ago. And when the job opened up back in 2011, I called him, and he went right to work to help me create this opportunity. So, Jose, you know how I feel about you and your family. Stuart Miller, who's not here today, but been a tremendous supporter of our program. And Rudy Fernandez, who has apologized to me about 50 times that he couldn't be here today because he's was celebrating Christmas in Cincinnati with his family. But without those folks, we wouldn't have the basketball program that I've had the joy and pleasure of representing. And it's been an honor to be the head basketball coach at the University of Miami. I've loved every minute of it. I can't thank the coaches that are with me now, who's worked so diligently these last several years, and all my former coaches and former players who helped create the environment that we have and the legacy that I'm leaving behind. It's really hard to put into words why I've decided to do this. But it's because of my love of basketball. I love the game. I love coaching it. I love practice every day. I love working with the players. But because I love the game and I love the university that much, I felt like, okay, there's one thing you got to constantly ask yourself. Are you going to give everything you have, the commitment that it deserves, 100% of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? And quite frankly, I've tried to do that throughout my life and throughout my time here. But I'm exhausted. I've tried every which way to keep this going. And I know I'm going to be asked a lot of questions, but I want to answer them before I'm even asked. What shocked me beyond belief was after we made it to the Final Four, just 18 months ago, the very first time I met with the players, 8 of them decided they were going to put their name in the portal and leave. I said, don't you like it yet? No, I love it. I love Miami. It's great. But the opportunity to make money someplace else created a situation that you have to begin to ask yourself as a coach, what is this all about? And the answer is it's become professional. But it's been my philosophy, and the way I've approached this game is about teaching, coaching, developing relationships with young kids and trying to help them develop and prepare them for life when they're no longer playing basketball. And my wife and I have tried to create a family atmosphere. I've always felt I'm an ambassador of the university. Wherever we go, we represent the University of Miami, and it's all about the U. So I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I thank everybody for coming, my players, my coaches, and all of you, the people who have made this job so special. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Coach, and we'll open it up for questions for both Dan and Jim. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim, it's kind of like a funeral in here. I was saying there should be flowers and wreaths up there. You say you're exhausted and all of these things, we know all these things that have been happening in the game. Was there something that happened in the last week? Was it the last loss that was just like, this is it? The timing, what happened on Sunday when you woke up and you said, this is the day, I'm done?
Well, it was Saturday after the game, but as I try to explain, this is an accumulation of so many events that have occurred from right after the Final Four. And if you even back up a year, we got to the Elite Eight. We did not have a single player with an NIL deal. It hadn't really taken place. And then the next year, we had 15 guys on the team, only 4 of them had NIL deals. The thought and the commitment was really to the team. And we had terrific players who were all about trying to accomplish the goals that we set out for ourselves. If you look at the Elite Eight teams, Sam Wardenberg made that team with his great leadership. Charlie Moore and Jordan Miller came in and bought right into what we do. And then we had Isaiah and Cam McGusty, who were already there and understanding. My good feeling comes from watching a young man like Isaiah Wong go from a freshman, where he's an okay player, to a senior where he's the ACC Player of the Year and an NBA draft choice. That's the joy that I get from coaching, of watching them learn and develop and improve and become like part of your family. So when we went from having no one on NIL to 4 guys on NIL to everybody on NIL and not getting better, I was like, that's my responsibility. I'm the head coach. I'm in charge of this. How do I make it better? And last year was a disaster. I felt like not only am I disappointed in myself, I set a certain level of expectation for the program. And I have all the support that it should take. We should be competing for an ACC championship or even a national championship on a fairly consistent basis. And I thought we were doing that, and we were moving closer and closer to being able to do it, and then this happened. So going into this year, I've just felt like, okay, we need to get back to where we were. And I've got a great group of kids. It's not their problem, right? It's the system now, or the lack of a system. We don't really know. I didn't know how to navigate through this. You know, one of the questions you had to ask yourself, because the portal is so big, and I'm all for transferring, but what the portal created is transferring every year. I loved having Angel Rodriguez and Sheldon McClellan and Kamari Murphy transfer in and spending a year here learning to live and love Miami and help us, because they knew the system and they had bought into the philosophy that we shared with them, the coaches. Now, they were all in. Now it's just so different. And guys come in and it's a quick turnaround. And you can't really lay the foundation for what I'm about in that short a period of time. So I felt like, well, if I can't do this as well as I'd like, or I feel the university deserves because of the tremendous support that we get, then maybe there's someone out there that can. And if I can help them in any way, if I can help the university in any way, I want to do that, because I love the place.
Hey Jim, this is a pattern that's developing in coaching now with your contemporaries, now yourself, deciding not to coach anymore. Do you see this continuing to pick up steam? Is it that frustrating?
You know, I can only speak for myself. You know, every coach has his own professional way of looking at things, personal way of looking at themselves. You know, I've had the honor of coaching at 3 different Division I institutions: Bowling Green, George Mason, and Miami. And for any of you that know me, that have heard me speak about my philosophy of attitude, commitment, and class, that acronym is ACC, because that was my dream, to one day be the head coach of an ACC school. And then when the Miami job opened up and Jose was able to create the opportunity for me, I felt like I died and went to heaven. And my wife and I, our children, we wanted to build a community. We started with a summer basketball camp. So we've gotten to know, like, Manny Cadre's son is one of my all-time great campers. Not basketball-wise, he's not that good in basketball, but he is an absolutely superhuman being. And now Rudy Fernandez, his children, Joe's grandson, was a star at my camp. I love that interaction, the community that you bring together. And that's what basketball should be. They call it sports and entertainment. Yeah, I can buy into that, but gotta win. And in order to win, you've got to be totally committed. And at this point, after 53 years, I just didn't feel like that I could successfully navigate this whole new world that I was dealing with. Because my conversations were ridiculous, with an agent saying to me, well, you can get involved if you're willing to go to $1.1 million. I'm like, what? $1 million? And that be the norm. That was the norm. Like, you're talking to people that expected $1 million for playing college basketball. So for those guys, and God bless them, that can handle that can work through it, that the schools that can figure out a way to either put so much money to it or figure out a way that you can live with less. But I talk to a lot of my friends, and they're having all the same problems I'm having. How long they will last, it's anybody's guess.
Jim,
Jim, as this situation was developing, did you reach out to some of your contemporaries about this decision?
Well, I talk to my wife and my sons all the time, and I speak to one guy. He's a sports psychologist. His name is Dr. Bob Rotella. And we talk 2 or 3 times a week. But the one thing I didn't do was I didn't call him after our game on Saturday, because I knew he would try to convince me not to step down. I mean, we've been best friends for over 40 years. He counsels me and has counseled me throughout my career. And I made up my mind. I was looking at the season and kept asking myself, can you figure out a way? And I kept trying. We had 6 different starting lineups. That's not the consistency and the balance that you're looking for as a coach. It's not your players' fault. I mean, it's not their fault. I mean, but my most important thing now is to support Bill Courtney and the coaches and the team, to be there for them in any capacity. I don't know how many of you know, Bill and I have been best friends for 28 years. He was with me at Bowling Green. He was with me at George Mason. And then I was absolutely thrilled when he decided he'd come and help me with our program. He recruited all the players at George Mason that took us to the Final Four, every one of them, as a result of his efforts. And then he was the guy that brought in Jordan Miller and Charlie Moore, Nigel Pack, and Norshad O'Meara. He was the point person for all those guys. And I wouldn't have been able to stay coaching if I had not met him 28 years ago, because and he'll do a great job. He's got a very difficult job ahead of him, because the ACC is a very difficult league.
Jim, what will you miss the most? Especially, even though I know you said you're going to be part of it, try to be around, what will you miss the most about?
Practice. I like practice. I like being around the guys. I like seeing them compete. I love when like Isaiah was improving and we could see he's headed to the NBA at Davon Reed. Those guys were recruited and they had good opportunities, but no one picked them to be NBA players. And now, I just did an interview with the Charlotte Observer. Isaiah's with the Charlotte Hornets now, and they love him. So I'm very proud of those guys. I'm proud of the assistant coaches who've been able to take advantage of their opportunities and get head coaching jobs. And my former coaches and former players who just stay in touch with me all the time.
What did the players say, like when you had told them, or they, is there anything you're willing to share with us of like, what did they tell you, or what did you tell them?
No, I just told them, well, I basically asked them what the 4 levels of commitment are. And Divine Ugachukwu answered. And I said, well, I've tried to make that commitment throughout my career, and it's gotten to the point now that I can't do it like I'd like to do it.
What did Liz say when you told her that you made this decision?
She said, no, you're not. We had talked about it when the kids started asking for NIL. After the Final Four, I said, this is bizarre. 8 guys off a Final Four team? And let's take it one step further. 4 of the key players on that Final Four run could still be here now playing. The world has changed. College athletics has changed. And it's much more complicated and difficult to navigate it.
Was this something you considered after last season?
No, after last season, I was so mad that I thought, this will never happen again. And we got to bounce back, and the staff worked incredibly hard. My passion for the game, my competitive spirit said, okay, we got to figure out what happened and how we correct it. But then, as I could see things unfolding, I didn't correct it.
Any other questions for Jim and Dan?
Coach, how much will you miss those basketball camps like you mentioned? I'm a former camper myself.
You are? Yeah. Do you like camp?
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
One thing you always mentioned when the kids would warm up, they would be shooting threes, and you told us all, you should start form shooting layups. And so, you've seen how the game evolves now, so many threes.
Yeah. You still shoot threes now?
Absolutely, but I form shoot first.
Well, at least you listen to me. These guys in the back, they don't listen to me. They go in and start jacking up threes immediately. But again, I love camp because it's teaching. It's working with young kids. And we've had great relationships that were developed from camp. Right, Adam? Buggy? There's one of my campers right there. Right? Who you develop relationships, friendships, and you care about them and they care about you. And it's what life's all about, developing relationships.
I don't know.
Michelle,
Yes.
wait a minute, did you cancel your vacation or just postpone it or what? You told me you were going on
I am
vacation.
officially on vacation today. Thanks for ruining it. I'm leaving out of the country tomorrow.
Okay.
Timed it just. I'm wondering, kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Gary said, but what do you think is going to happen to college basketball in the state that it's in, and what do you think that maybe players, like even in the NBA, players sign contracts in professional sports where at least have to stay a number of years, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. What do you think could be done maybe to, you love the game so much, you see that it's deteriorating in a way because of all this. What's a way that players could still get the money they deserve, but also coaches be able to develop players over a period of time? Is there a way to do it?
Well, I don't know if you remember on our run to the Final Four, people are all making a big deal about one of the NIL deals that one of our players got. And I said, yeah, well, that's going to be the new normal now, and it's just going to get either better or worse depending on how you look at it. My thought originally, and this goes back 20 years, is that these kids are students. They're not allowed to have what you would call work study, where like the normal student can come in and get a job. And my answer was we should make it like work study. They're going to put in 20 hours a week in their sport. Let's pay them a reasonable salary, make it professional, and make it transparent. Right now, there's no transparency. One of the difficult things, I feel like I'm an honest guy. So if I'm talking to someone, I hope they're telling me the truth. And in many situations, the person would tell you something, and you'd find out later no, that's not really accurate. And you don't know. You don't know who's telling the truth. There's no transparency. If someone tells you, oh, I've been offered $1 million, what would you offer me? Well, you've been offered $1 million? Man, you better take that, right? Because that's ridiculous, $1 million to play college basketball, right? And then you find out he was offered 100,000. You know, when there's no transparency, there's no professionalism in the sport. It's a pro sport now. You have to have a pro mentality, and you have to have a pro system in place to deal with all of it. If we're going to have agents, if we're going to be paying substantial amounts of money, then there needs to be some accountability for that. That's one of the things that I felt like, in these last 2 seasons, I'm not earning my salary. I'm supposed to be able to do a really good job because I'm being rewarded for all the previous success that I've had in hopes that that success will continue. And when I'm not able to do that, I say to myself, you need to step down. You need to step aside and let someone who is better equipped to handle this new world than I am.
And you guys got to go find that person in this environment, obviously, when coaches are not enjoying themselves. How do you go about that process?
It's a great question, Gary. But before I answer that, I want to Michelle earlier said this was, like a funeral, we needed wreaths. And I sat here and I've been thinking about that for a while. I think we all should be incredibly joyous. I mean, how many people, for Jim to have the self-reflection that he's articulated here over the last half an hour is unique and something that doesn't happen all the time. Whatever your profession, you always want to be able to move on your own terms. And to be able to do that, I think, is something that needs to be celebrated. And we certainly, want to thank Jim and Liz and their whole family for sharing him with us. But as we look to move forward, Gary, it's a difficult atmosphere out there. The lack of what Jim was just talking about, no collective bargaining, no limited antitrust exemption, all the things that you talk about and hear about in intercollegiate athletics has led to the symptoms that Jim just talked about. So that has to be the longer term view of what we need to have happen. Will that occur before we need to move forward and conduct a national search? I highly doubt it. So we're going to be looking at the attributes that the University of Miami can provide to a potential coach, looking at obviously playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference, which is an incredible basketball league, and making sure we put our best foot forward to get someone that can come in, be a part of the community, part of the university, but at the same time, feel like they have the ability to navigate this world and the changing world that we're in.
And what was the first thing, what did you tell Jim when he told you of, this decision? Were you trying to reel him back in, or you just respected that he came to you with this decision? Well,
of course, my admiration for Jim and our basketball program, I certainly asked him to reconsider, talk through a number of items. But as I was going through my little spiel, I could tell that maybe this mind was already made up. But I felt like I had to do it. And it was important for me to do that. But certainly respecting the decision that he made and allowing us to be in the position that we are, the great history that he's brought here to the University of Miami lays a great foundation for us to move forward.
Jim and Dan, if you were on the committee to regulate NIL, what would your first suggestions be?
Oh gosh, this is only a short press conference, so we won't get into all of that. There's a number of different ways to go, but I think first and foremost we have to be able to look at some form of, as Jim just talked about, the collective bargaining, the contracts, the if this then that. That's how professional athletics works, and I think right now we're in that world. And we want to make sure that well, I shouldn't say that. We have a foot in that world, but we're not completely there. Okay, whether it's basketball or football and transfer portal windows and timing and all the rest of that. just are completely different and very difficult for coaches to create that team atmosphere that I know Jim loved to do, and many coaches around the country are really wanting to have happen. So we need to change some of those rules. There's a lot of people around the country looking to try to make that happen, both in intercollegiate athletics and interestingly in Congress and Washington, D.C. to help try to make that happen, because it certainly may need some type of governmental intervention for it to happen.
Jim, what's next for you?
Before I answer that question, I would like to read a poem. It's a meaningful poem to me, and I'd like to share it with you because it'll give you a little indication about how I feel. It's from a philosopher named L.P. Jacks, who was a philosopher in the 1930s. The master in the art of living draws no distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence through whatever he is doing and leaves it up to others to decide whether he is working or playing. To himself, he's always doing both. And that's basically been my life. I love coaching. I've loved doing what I do. I want to stay very heavily involved with the university in whatever capacity they see fit. Not moving from Coral Gables, that's for darn sure, because this place is awesome. And the university has been so kind and generous to me and my wife. We owe it to them to do whatever we can to help get the basketball program back on its right footing.
Would you consider, you've always sort of considered yourself a professor of life?
Yeah, you've had me in as a guest speaker. How did I do when I was there?
Good, that's why I'm wondering, do you think?
I
you'd
love
like to be-
teaching,
Would
you
you
know.
like to be a part-time professor maybe?
I think I've always been a professor. Just basketball's been my subject, my topic. I mean, these guys will tell, I talk to them about history, geography. I've quizzed them on things that I don't think many coaches would even consider a topic that you should bring up to your basketball team. We've tried to make them more worldly. We took them to a Broadway show last year, to Hamilton, one of the great shows all the time. They hated it. I mean,
Any other questions? Great, thank you, Dan and Jim, and thank you everybody for coming. Happy holidays.
thanks everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.